Hey, Barbarian, can I get a hoya?
Hoya! Welcome, Inspired Adventures. Today we're going to be taking a look at a personal D&D story of mine. This one in particular is an all Barbarian One Shot. And it's not perfect, but the players still had fun with it. It doesn't really classify as an RPG horror story, but more so just a generic D&D story. So, as some of you may know, I really enjoy using one-shots to flesh out my world and try to encourage my players to try something new. I talk about this a bit in the Christmas one-shot story I did here. There are things going on outside of the area of the campaign world where my players might be at, and I can use one-shots to travel the world, describe new areas, NPCs, towns, factions, and then reference all of that later on in the main game. And here are a couple of reasons of why I do that. By having my players know that their actions in one-shots have effect in the rest of the real game, it brings to life the campaign world. They might have a one-shot where a group of thieves broke into a bank, and then weeks later, when the main characters come along and happen to be in that same town, they notice that there is a heavy guard presence. Or one group might sell a magic item to a traveling merchant, and lo and behold, the traveling merchant happens to show up at the main city hub sessions later. It also gives more rewarding player agency, and encourages them not to be too brash or ridiculous during a one-shot. It's much more forgiving than an actual campaign, but the players still remember their actions have consequences. The reason I encourage my players to use one-shot characters and to try new builds is it allows players to rotate either a single character through different one-shots that gain experiences, items, rewards, and have an impact on the world, just like the regular character, but more like an Adventurers League character. Or it allows the players to try a new character every one-shot, and sometimes they may find it's more enjoyable than the main character they have been running. Another reason I encourage one-shot characters is because I have a very large playgroup, probably close to about 20 people or so who would love to join a one-shot every month, but don't have time to play a full campaign. Let me give you some background. If you're not interested in me gushing about my homebrew and lore, go ahead and skip this part to timestamp One Shot Begins. This wasn't how I delivered the information to the players, just how I wanted to share it in the video. The continent of Thracis is much like North America in geography, and if you go past a mountain range on the northern side, you will enter a tundra landscape with flowing stepplands, volcanic mudpots alongside bubbling iridescent pools, harsh mountains with howling wind, and a land with the demeanor of intentional go-floop-yourself attitude. So of course people attempt to settle the land and live there. I was inspired by Greenland, Russia, Yellowstone, and Canada kinda rolled into an area separated by two different mountain ranges on the south and west walls, and the rest of the country reaching the ocean to the east and north. Sprinkle in some rogue volcanoes, mountains, glacial lakes, glaciers, hellish creatures, and the aforementioned humanoids who live in the area. When it comes to the people, the region used to be made of warring tribal groups. They were nomads who fought for land and survival. There is a region of land in this harsh forsaken wilderness that has remarkably lush grasses and trees, the region flooding every spring with water rich in volcanic material that makes the area desirable for farming and collecting fruit. With the colonizing of outlanders attempting to settle this region, it caused a demand for action. A leader of one of the nomadic tribes stepped forward and united the other groups. Rallying together, they pushed the settlers out of the fertile ground and to a barren plateau. Fast forward a couple hundred years, and the plateau now has an outpost town that receives steady supply and pays fealty to the kingdom, south of the mountain range. The united nomadic tribes still control the fertile grounds their ancestors protected, but they still remain nomadic in nature, especially being as the valley floods every year. The outpost, called Raven's View, has a manageable trading relationship with the wild people of the north. Attempts to settle other outposts have all failed, but there are individuals living in the wilderness. After listening to something on YouTube, I want to say it was a Mr. Ripper episode, I had the idea to make an all-barbarian party one-shot, and as they were coming up with their characters, I asked them if they wouldn't mind building a character off of one of the tribal groups. This is where the one-shot technically begins. The united tribes gather once a year in celebration of the successful reclamation of their homeland, a homeland their ancestors fought for, both from each other and from the outsiders, at Raven's View. This celebration is a time for trading, decisions, and competitions. I've been neglecting to mention, but these tribal groups weren't humans. We have Mastodon Loxodons, Saber-toothed Tabaxi, Turtles, and Aarakocras. I also provided humans as a race option, or was open to other ideas, but the players were interested in what was provided. Introducing the party to a variety of tents, carts, and people, a figurehead of one of the tribes was proclaiming that the upcoming competition would be the hunt. Competitors, made from different young tribal individuals, would take care of a reoccurring pest, whose eggs are found in a cave system to the mountains to the south. Every spring, these lizard-like bipedal creatures would lay eggs in the dozens, and if the population was not dealt with, the crops would be devoured. Tasked with hunting at least one or two of these beasts, and bringing them back, alive or dead, they were also encouraged to bring an egg if they found any, because merchants from Raven's View would be willing to trade for them. The leader also provided each competitor with rope and a net. And being as the party didn't have a healer, they each received 2 healing paste, which was effectively 1d4 plus 2 healing upon applying the paste to wounds, or could remove a status effect if consumed, at the expense of not healing HP. The players made good time traveling across the steppes, avoiding any struggles before they began to reach a thickly wooded area at the base of the mountain range. They knew one of the caves in the mountainside was where these beasts had their home, and as the party made its way through the trees, one of the players noticed something. A large, hairy creature lumbering ahead and to the right. It appeared to be stalking something. After warning the party, they decided not to interfere and slunk away, unnoticed by the hunting owlbear. It worked in their favor as well, for they were able to discover a cave entrance. As the member approached, they could hear a skittering noise of stones being kicked by clawed nails. Part of this particular competition, and in fact most of the competitions, was that they are rites of passage. The clan leader who introduced them to their task remained cryptic intentionally, and even though the party members had seen the creatures in previous years, most of the time the creatures were presented dead. They had no idea how the creatures fought, if there were larger threats, or how to go about capturing or killing the danger. After lighting a couple of torches, they descended into the cave, and even though it was dark, there was a distinct warmth to the air that enveloped them. More scritching and scratching noises preceded them, always out of the light of the flame. On occasion one would catch a glimpse, but before they could respond the creature would disappear into the shadows. Seeing how the monsters were going further into the tunnel, and a nagging fear continued to grow, one player had a great idea. The party made a plan and got to work. In the torchlight, they began to use spare rope to wrap the ends of each net together to make a larger one. 2 players then went and stretched the net across the tunnel that led to the mouth of the cave, laying it flat on the ground before taking cover. Another player hid in a chamber that had small tunnels that escaped to the surface, preparing to lunge out and scare the chicken-sized beast back to the original path. Lastly, the final player, the Loxodon, took both torches and charged down the tunnel system, yelling as loud as she possibly could like any good barbarian would. The cockatrices were confused, and sounds of hissing, squawking, and the steps of the charging mastodon echoed off the walls of the cave. A couple creatures attacked the charging Loxodon, while the rest made a beeline to make it to safety, abandoning their hoard of eggs. A few of the foul creatures were able to slip past the net, or the player protecting the smaller tunnels, but at the end of it all, the Loxodon passed constitution saves. They caught 9 cockatrices with the nets, who were writhing about and making a terrible sound that echoed noisily, and they happened to acquire a couple of eggs. The party felt great, and I was impressed. Wasn't expecting them to get away with catching so many of the cockatrices, let alone alive. I happened to have one last trick up my sleeve, but I wasn't prepared to use it. Initially, there was going to be a wizard who was intentionally crafting cockatrices or basilisk by collecting chicken eggs and placing toads on them for incubation, inspired by actual mythology. However, I never got around to crafting the wizard. As the party was leaving the cave, this crazy guy with a beard was screaming about, "My babies!" while jumping between tree branches. Can you imagine a frail old man being body slammed by 2 chads? That was essentially what happened to the wizard after only a couple rounds of combat. After tying up the man, they made their way back to the encampment, were praised, and each rewarded something. They also made additional gold by selling those eggs to merchants, and by receiving a bounty for the wizard, who was a wanted man. Overall, the players had fun with what was presented, and overcame the obstacles, but there are a couple of problems. It was too short of a session overall, ran for an hour and a half. It also didn't actually challenge the players with the danger of the cockatrice, mainly because the players avoided interacting with them by outsmarting the situation. They also avoided interacting with the owlbear, which I was planning on them fighting to make the party weaker for the cave. It's a mild story, and one where if I were to run a session like this in the future, I would intentionally throw something either chonkier, more aggressive, or have them hunt a bigger threat, to force the players into being willing to be daring. Especially if you're running a one-shot where the party is built for a particular skill. You want to be able to see the party use that skill during the game. I believe only a couple of players actually raged through the whole session, and what's the point of playing a barbarian if you're not going to rage? I was debating about running actual basilisk, but I figured between a party of 4 level 1 barbarians with no healing spells, that was going to be too tough of a fight. But you live and you learn as you mess around with attempting to build encounters. I know I have. I hope you enjoyed this personal story about an all-barbarian one-shot. Hopefully in the future I'll be able to run something more fleshed out. And while I'm reminded of it, Wild Horse Woodworks actually had a hilarious idea for a campaign on our Discord about a party of Chads going into Weeb country to return the fabled golden truck nuts. They would be the Brozerkers of Clan Thundercock that are known for their violent roid rages. And for the path of the Berserker, intimidating presence is replaced with, "Sup, brah? You wanna go?" Have had a bunch of great ideas from our Discord members, from homebrew to campaigns, and even story requests. It's a great group over there. I wanted to take a couple of moments to announce a couple of things. First off, we have Dice Goblins. It's a collaborative project between some content creators, and we're going to be playing a one-shot in the future. We're also looking into doing a podcast or maybe even a full-blown campaign, but for now, we're just doing a one-shot. We'll keep you posted with information as time goes on. The link is down below. I've also started a Patreon. Have a few different tiers available that each come with their own Discord benefit, along with some other perks, such as blooper recordings, and the raw audio of each video narration. It's experimental, so I'd be curious to hear your opinion about it. Thanks again for everything you do, and I truly mean it. Thank you everyone for all of the support you show by watching the videos, being involved on Discord, leaving comments, and subscribing. For this video came about by us hitting 5,000 subscribers. When I started this YouTube journey, I never expected to see that goal. I wouldn't be here today without you. You've inspired me. So until next time, hope you feel inspired.